We are now ready for our forthcoming session. Roadmap for Fintech to comply with DPDP. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite all those of you who intend to attend this panel discussion to kindly take a seat. Please walk into the hall, further into the hall, and please take a seat. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your presence and your participation. I now take the pleasure inviting up on this stage our illustrious panelists, and I invite each and every one of you to kindly join in with a nice, warm, resounding round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, we have in our midst Mr. Deepak Goel, Scientist, G and Group Coordinator, Cyber Laws, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. We also have amongst us Mr. Mithilesh Singh, CISO and DPO LIC. We also have amongst us Ms. Shilpa Mahesh Konkar, General Manager and Data Protection Officer, State Bank of India. Also, Mr. Nitin Bhatnagar, Regional Director, India, South Asia, Middle East, PCI Security Standards. I invite all of you to kindly please come up on stage. I'd also like to invite Ms. Deepti Laxmeshwar, Data Protection Officer, Axis Bank, who will be moderating this session. Once again, I invite all our esteemed speakers, and I welcome you on behalf of everyone here at GFF. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a nice warm round of applause. We have Mr. Deepak Goel, Mr. Mithilesh Singh, Ms. Shilpa Mahesh Konkar, Mr. Nitin Bhatnagar, and our moderator for this session, Ms. Deepti Laxmeshwar. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. And for those of you, ladies and gentlemen, intending to attend this, I request you, please do walk into the hall, take a seat, as I now hand over to our moderator, Ms. Deepti. Please do take this session forward.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to this exciting panel on the roadmap for fintechs to comply with DPDPA. So as organizations navigate the DPDPA challenge, the fact that we have the biggest challenges that most organizations face is balancing regulatory compliance with innovation and seamless customer experience. Mapping data across applications and systems, securing data at rest and in motion, breach reporting, and more importantly, doing a real-time tracking of customer consent before utilizing data, be it for marketing or third-party vendors. I think that is the biggest challenge that most organizations face. So today we are here to explore, along with our panelists here, as to how fintechs can play a transformational role in orchestrating these regulatory requirements by utilizing some tech solutions which are there for us to use going forward. So today joining us is this exceptional panel here of experts from across the ecosystem. I'd like to welcome Mr. Deepak Goel, Scientist G and Group Coordinator Cyber Laws, MIT, and he will share the government's vision and expectations on DPDP compliance. With us is also Shilpa Konkar, DPO SBI, who will discuss the real-world challenges, including the legacy environment and managing consent at scale. We also have Mithilesh Singh, DPO and CISO at LIC, who will help us outline a phased roadmap for fintech compliance, also distinguishing the responsibilities of data fiduciaries and data processors, and also tell us as to why and how it is different to comply with DPDPA, be it for a local player versus an MNC. And last but not the least, Nitin Bhatnagar, Regional Director at PCI Security Standards Council, who will provide practical solutions based on global standards and actionable steps for fintechs. So without further ado, let's dive into this exciting conversation. So I'll start with you, Deepak, sir. Okay. So how do you envision fintechs and policymakers working together to build a privacy-first ecosystem that supports innovation?
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible? So some of the faces are known. Rather, I would say most of the faces are known. So just excuse me, I would be repeating myself at so many forums. I have already spoken these things. But just on this GFF platform. I think this is the first time I'm speaking, so thank you GFF, thank you NPCI, and good morning to all of you. Thank you, ma'am. So just to start, means when did we start making this particular act? That happened sometime in 2022. So we were given very clear goals. I was just trying to search that particular part of the PPT that we presented to the who's of the country. I will simply narrate. The first point was to protect and secure personal data of individuals while ensuring the continued processing of it. Continued processing means if I am processing it already with a typical consent, so I can continue to process and making it secure. So this was the first typical article of us. Not to disrupt ongoing processing while making the entities accountable. The third was to enhance the ease of living and ease of doing business and enhance the digital governance part of the ecosystem. Since we are here as a fintechs, so digital finance ecosystem would be the most prominent thing. The fourth was to create a future-ready, evolvable framework of trust, data protection, and digital trade. Enable our Indian digital economy with the innovation ecosystem. And the implementation of Act, that was more from the government point of view, but that was to be digital. And we were not to be very prescriptive. We were simply giving some guiding principles. So here, the core part is, shall we innovate? Yes, I think we shall. So having said that, in just few moments before we started, SBI chairman was, I think, SBI chairman was there, and he said that almost 2/3 of the world of the country is on the finance ecosystem, and that on the digital finance ecosystem. And when we are saying digital, it's normally happening to be fintech. So, and at your side, it's the technology. But at my side, means at the user side, I may be tech savvy, I may not be tech savvy. But as a fintech, our responsibility is to basically ensure the protection of the data of the consumer. Giving him a service, seamless service, protecting his data, taking his consent, obtaining the consent. And when we are obtaining the consent, so it's a sort of that we are making ourselves as a data fiduciary. So data fiduciary, as in this DPDP construct, everybody knows, has a huge, huge responsibility. They are accountable to the users. They are accountable to the rights of the individuals. They are accountable to the protecting the data, keeping it secure, obtaining consent, and then if you have some entity as a data processor. Data processor in this fintech world could be hosting service providers, could be entities who are giving it a sort of security services. It could be credit scoring companies. It could be rather last mile delivery agents. So all those would be data processors. So combining together data processors and data fiduciaries, they have a huge responsibility of keeping the data secure and making yourself innovative. Coming to a very specific point that what we can do. Consent architecture that we need to build. So we can build upon those particular things. Can we strengthen the hands of the individuals? Can we strengthen the rights of those people like us, people like the normal consumers? We have 3 or 4 rights. Most of the things are already implemented in some fashion or one fashion or the other. But can we augment onto that? Can we augment the rights of those individuals? Can we augment the security posture of our ecosystems? These are few of the very critical things. And then one thing that we aspire for is consent or rights. So we have 2 very important DPIs. One is UPI related to finance ecosystem. Another is Aadhaar related to digital identity of our ecosystem. So Aadhaar, I think more than 99% of the country is covered. For digital finance, UPI, Means every now and then, new corner of the country, we see people accessing this UPI interface. So can we create a sort of a DPI related to consent or to the rights or to anybody, any other sort of a technology that we can think of, a technology product which we can scale up to say 1.4 people among us. And if God permits and the technology evolves, or say if we all evolve as a group, can we scale it up to the country or across the country also? Yes, this is just one of those few points that I just wanted to share.
Thank you, sir, for that. The next question again to you, Deepak, sir. How will DPDP compliance shape India's digital financial ecosystem in 5 years' time from now?
Actually, I got a call. Sorry.
So the next question also was for you, sir.
Yep.
Basically, how will DPDP compliance shape India's digital financial ecosystem in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years. We are looking digital finance as the bedrock. Means digital finance or the fintech or combined together, they are sort of a national creators, I think. And they should enhance onto these particular type of things. Means they can say, cut across the sectors, they have their own knowledge base, they have their own products. So if they can share their knowledge with across other sectors also, we have health, education, agri, these are also coming digital in a very good way. But financial is one of those very mature sectors that we have. So if we can just map up to those particular sectors, overlap them, or say, share your knowledges, share your products with them, and say, take a lead in this DPDP compliance, and then slowly, whenever this act starts getting implemented, I think the fintech sector should be taking a lead and getting the whole country compliant. Means when I'm saying whole country compliant, it's not related to the industry. We are looking at the government level also.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Shilpa, over to you now. So what, in your opinion, are the biggest scalability challenges that large organizations anticipate in implementing DPDP across a large customer base and, more importantly, a large geography like ours?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Deepti, for asking this question, and thanks, GFF and PCI, for having me here, giving an opportunity to part of such an esteemed panel. Scalability perspective, of course, like when it comes to SBI, so certain figures, which is a public figures, nothing confidential to SBI, like it's a 20 million customers, 23K branches, we can say, and 2 lakhs plus employees. And when we have to cater to such a large scale, but again, a scalability is something like risk and opportunity, as we say, like it's a two sides of the coins. So if this can be an interesting challenge. So when we have a scalability, of course, scalability, I can divide this in 3 parts, like PPT, people, process, technology. When it comes to technology, to cater the technology part while doing this DPDP implementation and achieve a sustainable, sustainable compliance, effective compliance. Because the very objective of this DPDP introducing in India is to empower citizens, data principle with the right of privacy. So from that perspective, when we are just sharing certain approach, like certain organization, many organizations working at this scale can adopt this approach. And of course, like we are open, if something new also you can share and we can improvise our strategy. So from scalability perspective, when it hits technology, SBI is a 70-year young organization, so you can assume that there are many legacy systems are also there. Of course, like the roadmap, as our chairman sir has just now said, it's always a technology-driven company. New technology is getting adopted and delivered. Still, many people have like access to a branch also. They prefer to do a branch banking and all this part. So though we say that yes, we have a centralized, and many BFSI banking industry can also agree. So we have a centralized system, but at certain distributed systems are also there. Maybe like our own YONO or mobile apps of different banking sectors for data profiling or multiple things, distributed systems are also exist. So when any privacy enhancing tools, when we have to adopt to cater different obligations of DPDPA, whether it's a build or by anything like whichever organization can do, scalability is a very important factor that we can't compromise, because when you'll say it's 520 million customers and kind of thing, you can we can assume like how humongous the systems, the database, the underlying systems are there. And it's not a one-time job. When the consent framework will establish, the consent life cycle, we have a data life cycle which is like now the established word, now the consent life cycle also will come into place. It will touch many ingress outgrade system also because data processing can only be done with legitimate use and consent part. So when it comes to consent, like marketing, analytics, promotional things, the consent framework or the consent technology solution tool, what we'll adopt, that will touch base to these systems, and that consent life cycle also has to be catered. So scalability is very important from technology perspective, people and process, again a very important part. When I'm saying like 2 lakhs employees, so I came from technology background, so when this cyber security implementation, all this happened, it is little back-end kind of thing. Of course, like it is touching people, but at back-end also we can do this implementation, but DPDP implementation is certain things, business, the end user, my tailor is getting involved in that part. So I don't want to burden him with many of the compliances. We have to simplify the compliance for that perspective. So people and process, like many things, process re-entry, we have to simplify the process, because with the account opening form, with the loan application form, now the privacy notice, consent, and all these things will also has to be delivered and has to be processed. So from that perspective, also the scale. When like this 2 lakhs employees are like working at the many of the tailor, the consistency is the part. When we have a consistency in implementation, then only the effective implementation will happen. So from that perspective also, when you are delivering or implementing at such a large scale, and like again, from SBI perspective, you'll see it's a very diversified customer base from geography perspective, literacy perspective, financial status perspective. So we have to cater each and every like also, so, I mean, Shetty sir said that it's a banker. We are like every Indian household at least has one SBI account. So we have to consider each and every data principle, what is the requirement, and that trust factor, that ethics factor, what SBI has built upon, that we have to sustain. So from that perspective, this people process technology, sustainability part is very important. That's what, again, like just a 30 second. So sustainability, one more part, the ETB part, we have to provide a privacy notice and privacy notices to the ETB customer. So I personally feel as a DPO, we have to be little innovative. We have to support our business also, of course, to work in a compliant manner, so that the data principals also will, they can take a data privacy conscious decision. At the same time, digital transformation and all these AI ML things, whatever the organization is doing, and of course it is for benefit of the end users, customers, that can be also catered. So as a DPO, as a data protection offices, we have to be little innovative, design our this privacy compliances in such a way that the compliance can be achieved. People don't feel a consent fatigue kind of thing, and we can do the effective DPDP implementation and sustenance. Thanks, Deepti.
Thanks, Shilpa. The next question, which is quite close to my heart, okay, which is basically how do we, strengthen vendor accountability and oversight as a part of DPDP compliance strategy?
Yeah, I think like it's close to everyone's heart, because if you'll see, so when the act comes, the last part is fines. When we also, like when the initially we have shared the feedback, when the draft rules feedback also has been shared, data processors are not fined directly, but like sir also, Deepak sir, in many interaction, he said, and I also personally, I mean, like as a empathize way, as I said, like in India, we can't directly roll out any implementation. We have to be little empathize way. So as a data principal, if I am a data principal, I don't like to go to 10 organization. Of course, like sir said this, and I just now also I told sir that I am taking your words, and when like discussions are happening in the organization and all, so data fiduciary has to take that responsibility. But then like how the vendor ecosystem, we can ensure the compliance compliance perspective. So one is SLA, MSA. That traditional part is also there. We can maybe amend that part to add the data privacy compliance requirement, or we can have a separate data processing agreement. Again, it's a contractual obligation. Again, like if something goes wrong, we have to fight in the court of law. That's a different story. But again, it's a one-time compliance, whatever the on-site due diligence. What we have to do extra, maybe like the regular audit, third-party risk assessment. So certain maybe clues or approach, what is like just coming into the mind that confidentiality part is always there, right to audit is always there, incident reporting is always there, because we also have to report, otherwise also to certain in 6 to 8 hours. So that things are already there. But consent part, this if somebody is executing the DPRM, if somebody is executing right to access, right to deletion, we have, as a data fiduciary, we have to do at the same time, we have to go to the data processor also. So that obligation has to be added. Data deletion requirement. So right now, as an organization, generally in India, we have always focusing on data retention. What about post that, after the retention, deletion? So we, as a data fiduciary, again, like we have to ensure that a vendor ecosystem is also deleting that part. Consent, if somebody is withdrawing the consent, changing their consent preferences, not only data fiduciary, but data processor also. So these things has to be there in the data processing agreement. Maybe we can amend in the MSA SLA, and we have to do a periodic chase, of course, like based on the risk categorization of vendors. And data fiduciary processor relationship, that has to be established clearly. Because just a I mean, very rough example, that when generally, suppose bank and insurance companies is having that relationship. So somebody is coming to any banking site, and that insurance option is there, redirecting to the insurance part. So maybe like we are deciding, so we are thinking like now the insurance company will decide the purpose, and insurance company will be the data fiduciary. But suppose that customer is not turning out a customer of that data, I mean that insurance company also, then it's a line in between. So if it is redirecting from our side, we have to ensure the data is getting deleted. So this data fiduciary processor relationship has to be established very clearly, and then only we are able to do a very establish this vendor ecosystem properly. This is my thought.
Sure, thanks, Shilpa. Circling back like to the topic of the day, Mithilesh, to you. What, in your opinion, would be a phased roadmap for fintechs to comply with DPDPA? Not only that, how would you bifurcate responsibilities of data fiduciaries vis-a-vis responsibilities for data processors?
Sure. Hope I am audible to all of you. First of all, good afternoon, and thanks to NPCI for the invite. So I believe you have put in a couple of questions under one question. So first we need to understand what is the basic difference between data fiduciary and data processor. So far, because of this DPDP Act, one of the very important entity which has also been very well talked about is the data principal. So who are the data principal? We, whoever are getting the services from the various institutions against which we are sharing our personally identifiable information. So that's the data principal. We are authorizing the service provider how you will deal with my data. What are you going to do with my data? What is your rights? And how you are going to process the data. But when you talk about any banking organization or financial services organization, it's not just one entity who is servicing you, right? So it's a complete ecosystem. So when we talk about the ecosystems, then the fintech players and various service providers, they also come into picture. So banks, when they opt for services from various other entities who are going to process the PII data of data principal, eventually they become the data processor. So here we need to understand the difference between the data fiduciary and the data processor. So data fiduciary has been given the authority by the data principal that, look, under these clauses, you can process my data. These are the nature of the people or the third party with whom you can share our data. This is the timeline. Beyond that, you can't keep my data with you or with the third party. And the entity who are going to process or deliver some of the services on behalf of the data fiduciary, they are the data processor. So now, one of the very important thing, as Madam has also mentioned, in this entire journey, vendor management, vendor contract, that's a very, very important thing. But before that, two of the very core principles which we should always follow, and we will, in fact, fintech need to follow, that fintech is a very crucial element of our financial ecosystem. Maybe a couple of years back, we could have thought of whether how much fintech contribution is there in the financial ecosystem. Today, fintech plays a very, very vital role. Anything going wrong with any fintech players, it will have a very cascading impact on the entire financial ecosystems of the country. So that's the important aspect. So every fintech has to look into two aspects. One is with an approach of data security and the data privacy as the core. These are the non-negotiable elements. So once you have these two components in place, then everything revolves around it. So for two different organizations offering a similar nature of services, but if they have two different SOPs to offer that services, their role pertaining to the data fiduciary and data principle, that also will change. So when I say change in the sense, general terms, what it happens that for any KYC related stuff, as one of the example, bank takes services of any third party. So here the third party is your data processor. Now, if the data processors starts directly getting the data from the principal and consuming that as a part of her services, then in this kind of use cases, the data processor eventually get into the shoes of data fiduciary. So that's why we have to be very, very clear, and lot of the places, the maturity comes when your process comes with an automation, where you need to understand that right from the data acquiring till the time the data are being retained or being, the relation is being terminated with the data principal, each and every stages we need to understand that how the entire SOPs, how the workflow, how the automation comes into picture. Accordingly, this entire data processor and the data fiduciary relationship evolves and operates into. And that's how we should look into it. Yeah.
Sure,
And the second question you had that what is the roadmap
Yeah.
for a fintech to get compliant with the DPDP? So generally there are 4-5 phases which most of the organization follows, and fintech is also as very, very important players in this segment. They have to follow is that the first is the as-is assessment. So as-is assessment is basically a gap assessment wherein you try to identify that, okay, what all things which exist in our environment. Although the DPDP Act has come in 2023, rules are yet to be finally notified in 2025. But I believe a lot of our organizations in India, basically in the BFSI space, they are somewhere regulated with different regulators, right? So they have been doing a lot of good things specific to various guidelines and the regulatory requirement. Now you start performing the first as-is assessment to understand that the first basic principle is that form a cross-functional team. Because this particular act is not going to be owned by one particular department or one particular team. It has to be a cross-functional team, people from legal, IT, cybersecurity. They all should have a business side. They all should have a proper representation. Once a cross-functional teams are being set up, certainly they need to have a top management support and buy-in with respect to the resourcing, budget and everything. Followed by that, you need to identify what are your data landscape. Because we never in the history of our country have ever thought of that granular and that impactful act is going to come. Now here is the act. So we need to figure out that all your infrastructure, all your systems where all this data resides, Basis that, then you identify that, okay, out of those data, the data landscapes, where all you are capturing the PII data. There could be a possibility that same nature of data might be present at multiple places. One of the very important asks of the Act is also that data minimalization. So you have to have minimum place of where you store one instance of the data. So once you understand that where are the PI data are being stored, further to that, what are the nature of controls which are being there in terms of the process, in terms of the other systems-related controls. So that is basically more understanding on the as-is part. Once you have as-is, so entire phase has to be linked to outcome related, outcome delivery related phases. So from the phase 1 or phase 0, I will say, as-is assessment, then you move to the next phase, where you get into a governance phase. So in the governance phase, then you look into that, okay, do we have a policy on the privacy aspect? So you put a governance structure. So governance structure brings many of the aspects. Like the Act says that you need to have a data protection officer. So do you have a data protection officer in place? And if you have a data protection officer in place, then the name and the designation with the contact details, are that being published over your portal or not? So that you have to take care as per the Act requirement. Followed by that, then when I talk about the policy part, so policy applies to both your end customer, who is your data principal, and the policy also applies to you as well, as a data fiduciary. And why so? Because your people, your employee should also understand that once they have access to the PI of the data principal, how to deal with those kind of data. So that is very, very important. So your internal policy and procedures around the data privacy, that is very, very crucial, and that is certainly should publish over the intranet of your organization and should be accessible for your people to deal with that. What is your rights when you are dealing with the data or PI data of the data principal? One message or sensitization across the organization is very, very vital, is that you are not the owner of the data. We are the data custodian. The owner is the data principal. At many times when we interact with people, or even if you go to BFSI, people start feeling that they are the owner of the data. No. Data principal is the owner. They have given you the authority to deal with their data. So once you set up the governance principles, once you set up the right set of officials, specific department and the team, grievance officers, so then comes your reasonable security assurance. So what is actually reasonable security assurance? And many of us in the BFSI, we do have a lot of security checks and balances already existing in place by virtue of the various regulations under which we operate, right? So now that those controls and the processes which are already in place, those frameworks which are in place, and there are a huge amount of the list of those kind of processes and the frameworks, I will not get into the detail. That helps you to leverage, to build on that, and then take it from there. So what does it mean? Like you conduct all kind of security assessments. You conduct various kind of ethical hacking exercise, pen testing exercise, and various other nature of exercises. So one of the ask or the expectation of this act is also that you need to have a reasonable amount of security processes and assurance in place. So that's the another important aspect. Then comes your that once these all things are there, then you start identifying what are the further gaps which are still existing in the systems or the environment pertaining to the act. And there you take it on a stage by manner that, okay, so for any new products or any new businesses where it's being discussed, privacy has to be sort of as the first principle. So that has to be taken into consideration, and then it becomes an ongoing continuous monitoring exercise, and that's how this entire journey of DPDP Act compliance to be made. Yeah.
Sure, thanks, Mithilesh, for
Taking a
that.
little more.
I think you just cover everything.
So over to you, Nitin. So in your opinion, what are the practical tools and global frameworks that fintechs can adopt today to operationalize DPDP compliance? And how can they be tailored to meet the needs of Indian fintechs in particular?
I think the fellow panelists have already covered a lot of things, but let me precisely cover the security aspects to it. The data security, data privacy, these are just the jargons. But I think more importantly, what the fintechs, and the topic for this panel is also roadmap, for fintechs to comply with DPDP. Now, there are certain things that the organizations definitely should look at is from the point of the threats that are looming around, right? The emerging threats are there, and we need to also protect ourselves from these kind of threats, because once you have some kind of a data breach, there's definitely going to be fines, right? There are going to be investigations. The cost that is going to come is going to be massive for the organizations, while you're talking about the cost that you're going to put in implementing the act. Now, I'll just quickly talk about the standards. The global standards definitely are going to complement the act that is going to be enacted very soon. But more importantly, I think from the education point of view, what I just want to highlight are the three most common causes that causes the data breaches. And the learnings that we have from the breaches that have happened globally that I would like to highlight, I think three threats, probably most common causes of the breaches are basically the remote access vulnerabilities. I think that's something which is very common. If the organizations are able to look at these, and these are basic hygiene. I'm not saying these are very rocket science, it's like it takes time to identify. These are very, very basics. Remote access vulnerabilities, right? Where the attackers try to, the criminal, mind people, the hackers trying to get access to your systems, right? So that's something that you need to be really cautious, the malware attacks. These are the ways that these malicious people try to access your systems and extract data and information that you are intending to protect. The second is, most importantly, is your weak passwords. I think this, people take it very lightly, and I think the weak passwords are the main causes for many of the data breaches that are happening globally, right? So I think making that as a practice, having a strong password, is definitely going to help you protect the data that you are protecting, right? So that's one thing. And I think these standards, the global standards, are talking about the best practices. And implementing these best practices are definitely going to help you from those nuances that are going to come by. And third and the last is the outdated and unpatched softwares. And I think that's something is, again, is very critical. People think, it's just, we'll wait for some more time, we'll have to call the vendor, there's a cost, there's everything. But I think that's very critical. You need to make sure that you patch your systems. Patching is very critical for you to protect the payment data. And last but not least, what I say, respect the privacy, safeguard data, and enable trust. I think with these three basic hygiene, like the way that we wake up in the morning, we brush our teeth, we do everything that we are required to do. I think if we take these three best practices as the benchmarking while we are entering to the work and ensuring we are taking care of this, I think we should be able to protect the payments. Not the payments, I would say this, the payments is one angle to it. Any data, any information that needs to be protected. With that, I just put my...
It's quite beautifully put, Nitin. Thank you so much for that. I'll have this one last question for all of our panelists right now, and quite close to my heart, as to what do you really think, and we'll go in the order of the seating. What is that one challenge you believe all of us have been underestimating when it comes to DPDP compliance? So Nitin, we start with you.
I think the cost, which I just highlighted in my my just brief talk, is I think we should now look at educating others. If you're able to, I was talking to sir in the morning, and I'm just trying to highlight that educate. If you have already done, accomplished the compliances, go and help others. I think that's the best way to spread the word about the best practices that the others can follow and help themselves in protecting the data.
Deepak sir, to you. Can I come in last? No. Are you allowed to do that? No, I can't.
Just a moment. So, yeah, what we are living actually means what is not being getting accounted into the organization's business model related to DPDP compliance. It's written in the Act itself. Section 8.4. As we all know, this privacy implementation or any security implementation, normally in the organizations that is left with the security teams, or sorry, the IT teams. It's their job. Actually, it's not their job, it's the organization's job. So Section 8.4 in the DPDP Act says that we have to employ or deploy technological and technological measures, I think, and administrative measures, organizational measures and technical measures. So when we say this, it includes business, IT, operations, HR, and whatever divisions we have in any organization. So everything has to be complied. It is not to be only the IT component, and most of the organizations we are looking at is that privacy implementation, security implementation, it's the IT team job. So let's upgrade ourselves from there. So just need to take very strongly this particular point that it's an organizational responsibility, not IT team responsibility.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Shilpa?
Yeah, so when it's like one thing which we are underestimating while doing this DPDP implementation and to achieve a sustainable compliance, it's a competitive advantage. We should not focus or make this popular like as just a compliance burden. It's a competitive advantage. It's a business opportunity. Once we'll do DPDP implementation, we can do this as a business advantage, competitive advantage. Our privacy policies are so strengthened. Our privacy notice, consent form is so easy that the people can do it. I mean, like very easily. Then the people will feel that yes, we are empowered with the right of privacy. Our data is secure. We are empowered with the privacy part. So if we can populate this within an organization, like as sir said, that it's a complete organization level cross-functional team has to come up. So to that end, users, the tailors, or the business teams, analytics team, who should not feel that this DPDP implementation is coming in between the way of the digital transformation, but if it's a competitive advantage, then we'll get a buy-in within organization also. Sales team will also come and help us. Okay, so we will also help you in doing this privacy compliance because in like couple of years, definitely this will be turned out as a competitive advantage. The more privacy aware services, compliant services we are providing to the customers, and we are empowering them with the DPRM rights, the consent life cycle is so flexible. So that way it will be turned out as a competitive advantage. So this is something like which we are underestimating and should not be populated as a compliance requirement, but it's a competitive advantage requirement. Another thing, like we just have to look within. We are regulated entity. BFSI sector at least is a regulated entity. Many things are already in place. DPRM requirement. If we'll see the maybe like the most of the rights, like leave apart right to access. This is little more complex, and we have to provide more data. But right of correction and grievance redressal, update part, nomination also we are doing from financial responsibility perspective. Now we have to do a data perspective. Of course, like have to dwell more. But these things are already in place. We are catering these requirements to the customer. Maybe that systems can be leveraged and made it that system can be leveraged, and we can make it a DPDP compliance. DPI requirement. We are doing RCSs. We are doing ops risk assessment. We are doing information security cyber risk assessment. Maybe that can be leveraged to make it follow this DPI part. So as a BFSI sector, as a regulated entity, we have to look within. We have to enhance those systems. Of course, we can take some privacy enhancing solutions help to cater this kind of requirement. But like certain frameworks, certain workflows are there. So that we have to do. So these two takeaways like competitive advantage and look within. Many things are already there. We are already regulated, and Mithilesh sir also has already said the gap assessment are very important. Where we are and where we have to reach. We know like where we have to reach as part of Act and draft rules perspective. So that gap assessment we have to do. Domain-wise, we have to identify like where we have to reach, and certain milestone timeline has to be there. The KRAs has to be there, and then definitely we will reach over there with the effective compliant part as India as an industry. Thanks.
Sure. Mithilesh?
So I will not take much of your airtime. So quick, DPDP Act is a domain and industry agnostic act, and which we all understand that, right? So there's a big myth, at least in the technology side, that cost of compliance is always costly affair. Now here is the act wherein cost of non-compliance is going to hurt you. So better be prepared, be practical, change your mindset, the culture. Eventually that will help to meet the expectation of this particular act. So that's all from my side.
Thanks, Mithilesh. That was a good ending to this particular panel discussion. And as we have our eyes right now on the fintechs basically, not as just innovators, but enablers of trust, I leave this stage enlightened with all of the knowledge that has been shared by our panelists here. Thank you so much, panelists. And thank you so much, GFF, NPCI, for having us here. And you guys for being a wonderful audience. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen, for that very enriching round of discussions. I invite you to step forward together for a group photograph, please, as we conclude with this session on Roadmap for Fintech to comply with DPDP. Ladies and gentlemen,